Okay, good morning everybody. This is ESCI 200, Introduction to Environmental Earth Science. I'm your professor for the semester. My name's Dr. Anderson, but honestly I'd prefer if you just called me Steve. But if you want to be formal, go ahead, that's fine. I consider you all to be adults, so we're going to act like we're all adults and we can be on some sort of equal level here. Let's see. So first of all, can you guys in the back hear me okay? It's all right. I have this cool sort of dog cone thing that I can also wear so you can actually see me speak. I can wear that. Can't lick myself, I guess, but that's all right. And if at any point you don't like this and you don't hear me well and you'd rather have me wear the dog cone, just send me an email or tell me and I'll switch over to it. But if this works, then we'll go with this. All right, let's just get right into this. My office is over in this little complex across the hallway. I'm not going to be there very much. You know, this whole semester with COVID is kind of a big risk management exercise for all of us, and we have to decide what level of risk we're willing to take. I don't know what you know about me, but I'm a geology professor. I think I'm 57 years old. I quit counting half a decade ago or so. And since 26 years old, I've been a professor and I study active volcanoes. That's kind of my deal. So until this year, I would fly to a volcano a couple times a year and study it. So I spent my whole life kind of managing risk. And my tolerance for risk, because I'm climbing around on something that can kill me all the time, is probably higher than the normal human being's tolerance for risk. But even so, I'm not all that willing to spend all this much time in a building that has lots of people in it. So I will probably be at home. You can get me at my office hours. I will be here during those times. But the rest of the time I'm going to be working from home. Send me an email. If you need to talk, we can do a Zoom thing or an email thing or whatever. But it should be pretty easy to get a hold of me and speak with me. Just give me a little lead time and we should be good. So along those lines, I'm going to do everything I can to make this a safe environment. We got stuff up here if you want to wash, use some hand sanitizer, wipe your desk down. I'll do it before class and after class as well. I'm leaving the windows open, try to get as much airflow in here as possible. So I'll do everything I can, but I don't know how this is going to go. None of us do. And if after a week or two or four, this seems like a really dumb idea, I'm going to switch it to all online. I know you guys are all in here because you want face-to-face, even though we can see only half of our faces. So I'll do my best to kind of honor that. But if you want to switch online, and we already have 4 or 5 students that are taking it totally online, I'm recording this and the audio. I'm going to mesh it together and post it later today. So if you at some point feel uncomfortable being here, just let me know, tell me why, so I can think about if there's any way I can fix it, or maybe you just said, no, this is stupid, I'm going to take this class from home. Just tell me, it's cool, okay? I completely understand if you guys don't want to be in here. And we have a third of the class that decided they weren't even going to risk it from the start. I completely respect that. So this will be a work in progress. If it does go all online, I might have to change some of the ways I do things and alter how I give exams, and maybe I won't give exams. Last semester I just said, I'm not dealing with the exam thing. I have one student who had me last semester, and I just switched over to online, and I'm more concerned about you guys learning things than I am what your grade is. I know grades are a big deal to you, and I'll be fair, but that's not going to be the focus of this class, is the grade. I want you guys to learn stuff. The grading is, I'll just try to do the best I can and keep it fair. Any questions on that so far? So if it gets bad, if I feel at some point this just is dumb, we'll go all online. I hope that doesn't happen, but who knows? I'm going to use Canvas and email. I'll send you emails to update things. I've got, like I said, a third of the class that's online already. I'll be posting all the videos of the lectures probably later in the day, that day, one day later at the most, depending on how much difficulty I have processing and uploading the video. I guess yesterday was kind of a disaster. Zoom went down all over the country, and we're all dealing with that. We'll do the best we can. So I'll be communicating with you primarily through email, through Canvas. I don't want to rely totally on Canvas because Canvas is like Zoom. It goes in the crapper from time to time too. Email's usually pretty reliable, so I'll do everything I can by email, but we'll see how it works. Textbook. This is like one of my, it's such a racket. I know you guys know this. You're spending $100, $200 for a textbook, and maybe you look at it once in a while. You know, some professors are really into their textbooks. I'm not into my textbook. I've never found a textbook that totally encompasses everything I want to teach in the class. So I'm not going to make you guys spend $200 for something I'm only going to use part-time. Anything you need in this class, I will provide to you. Okay, if there's extra readings, I'll provide those to you. You don't have to buy a textbook. But I know there are some people that really like having a supplemental style of learning to go with the lecture. And if that's the case, I have a link to a free textbook here. It was written a few years ago. It's kind of international in scope, which makes a lot of sense for this class because we're going to be looking at world problems from kind of a world view. I want to step away from it being a US-centric view of the world. I travel a lot. I've seen some cool stuff. I want to show that to you. Perhaps some of you have been able to travel a lot at this point in your lives as well. I want to look at environmental problems from a worldwide perspective and not just a US-centric perspective. And this textbook kind of fits with that. So if you need that, you can simply download it and use it and find the chapters that fit with what we're doing. But some of the chapters we'll have in here, just there's no textbook for it. I grab stuff from all different sources. So with that in mind, let's go on to the course description. This is an intro course, but it's 200 level intro course. So it's going to be a little more difficult than your normal 100 level course. We're going to use math in here, and I know that's going to scare the crap out of some of you. But we are scientists. We don't guess. You know, with this whole COVID thing right now, there's no guessing going on. We look at models, we look at numbers, and we apply the best mathematics we can to understand a situation and figure out what the results are going to be. Now, the math isn't going to be some super hairy sort of stuff. It's going to be algebra, maybe a little trig, but there is going to be some math. I'll just warn you from the start. It's going to be a little more advanced introductory course because it is 200 level, and it's going to have a lab component. We're going to learn to read maps, which are kind of the standard format for how a lot of geologists and environmental scientists deal with environmental data. A lot of it is map-based, so we're going to spend a lot of time doing maps. You'll have some paper maps at the beginning of the semester, but then we're going to move to an online system called GIS. How many of you have heard of GIS? None of you, maybe one. That's good. It stands for Geographical Information Systems. It's a smart mapping system that you can do online. One of the best online mapping systems that exists for Colorado is actually put out by the Colorado Oil and Gas Association, and it's free. You can just get online and you can be Big Brother. It's amazing what you can learn from these maps and the detail of which you can see things. And you're going to learn to use some of that stuff to answer and investigate some environmental problems this semester. But we'll start out with the basics. We'll start out with paper maps. I'm not going to do labs in class because it's kind of risky. So I'll send you home with the maps and you can do the work there. But if you need help, I'll be available. So I'll try to keep that somewhat safe. The other thing I'm thinking too with the labs, and maybe even for the lecture, right now it's too hot really to do anything outside, but I have an area over by Bishop Lair building that I can set up as an outdoor classroom. And I might do that. If it seems a little safer, I might be able to do that, but I'm not going to do it when it's 90 degrees out. That's just miserable. But next week it's supposed to cool off, and we'll see. I'll play it by ear. All right, what are we going to talk about this semester? Well, I don't really know. I have a laundry list of things I like to talk about, and I have way more information available than I can go through in a semester. So I kind of play it by ear. At the beginning of the semester, I have a few things I'm definitely going to cover, but based on your interests, on the questions you ask me, I can kind of get a sense for what topics I'm connecting with you the most, and I'll sort of steer the class in those directions. I don't have a sacred list of things that I need to go through in this class. I want you guys to learn some stuff. You know, I want you to learn some stuff that will stay with you well beyond the class, that you'll be able to use in the future. How many of you want to own a home someday? Most of you do. Most people do. That's a big deal. It's a big deal owning a home. And it's actually a really risky proposition, especially here in Colorado. There are places where you do not want to own a home. And I'll tell you why in this class. And you'll be able to use information that you can get free on the internet from other sources to really evaluate an area before you decide to buy a home there. When I first moved here, I moved here in 2007, so I've been here 13 years. I looked at buying several houses in Fort Collins and actually passed on 4 or 5 of them just because what I know about the land. I was able to look and see where are areas that have really high radon rates. And there's a bunch of them in Fort Collins. You do not want to live in an area that has high radon. We'll talk about why in this class. And it's really easy to figure out where those places are. You don't want to have a house that sits on expansive soils, because every time it rains, those soils swell, and if you have a basement, those swell and they start to push in on your foundation and they will crack it over time. And that can lead you to some very high bills. So we'll look at how to actually get that information and use it hopefully for something useful in your own lives. So we'll talk about, we're going to start with population today. I talk about population in all my classes because this is environmental geology. It's how humans interact with nature, basically. So we're going to start from the human standpoint right away and talk about people. People are the wild card in this equation. Sometimes people are smart, sometimes people are dumb. You guys are seeing this play out right now with this COVID thing. There's some really smart people out there, and there's some really stupid people out there. Sometimes stupidity can kill, sometimes stupidity can cost you a lot of money. I want you guys to be smart, educated, informed. So that's what we'll concentrate on. So we'll look at earth processes, some natural hazards, but mostly what I'm going to spend time on is looking at land and looking at energy and looking at water. Those are the 3 big ones: land, energy, water. You are affected by these things every single day of your life. You might not realize it, but you are. If you want to charge up your cell phone, what do? You plug it into one of these things, right? It's magic, right? This power comes out. Do you guys know where that power actually comes from? Most people don't. When you want to drink water, what do? You turn on some faucet somewhere, right? And magically this beautiful clean water comes out. You know, if you travel a lot, you know that that is not the norm worldwide. There are people that struggle, spend all day trying to find sources of water. I've been to places in Morocco where the women, that is their role in that society, get up in the morning, take their kids, walk 4 hours one direction to fetch water, and then they walk 4 hours back with their kids. That's what they do every single day of their life, just to stay alive. And you guys, I don't think, and that extends to me too, we don't realize how good we have it in such an advanced scientific society. We take for granted that that power is just going to come out of the wall all the time. I spent some time in Burma, Myanmar, and it works for about 1 or 2 hours a day. But you don't know what 1 or 2 hours a day that's going to be. It could be the middle of the night, it could be the morning, it might come on for 5 minutes and go away. That's what people deal with all the time there, and that's the best it is. Here, if we're without power for 5 minutes, you see people that are just at their wits' end. I don't know how to charge things. I mean, class would completely grind to a halt because we have all this electronic stuff. We take for granted our infrastructure in a big way. So we're going to spend time talking about where energy and water actually comes from. I don't want it to be just this magic stuff that comes out of walls, but that's how it is for most people. When you flush the toilet, that's the other thing. Go in the bathroom, flush the toilet. All the stuff you don't want, it just disappears into that hole in the toilet, doesn't it? Where does it go? Most people don't even know. Fact is, it goes out to a treatment plant, and you should know what happens to that, because all that water that goes down eventually ends up back in nature. And stuff you flush down the toilet, they might treat for that, but a lot of things they don't. If you flush drugs, prescription, illegal, whatever, down the toilet, treatment plants don't do anything to that stuff. They don't treat for that. So that water goes there, it gets treated, but the drugs that go into it don't get treated for. And And that water is then pumped into the nearest stream. And they're looking at fish populations downstream from wastewater treatment plants. They're seeing in some places where it's all female fish. And it's because of flushing down birth control products that have run their lifespan. They're finding all these things that we do aren't really good for the environment. So we'll talk about some of those things. We'll talk about climate change at the end of the semester if we have time. That's one topic that kind of affects everything these days. So we will get into that. Course requirements. Near the end of next month, we'll probably have a midterm exam. Then we'll have a final exam. And we'll have a second midterm exam in late October. So there'll be 3 exams. And then the lab portion of your course, which we'll talk about. First thing, we will not have lab this week. Okay, no lab this Thursday. Labs will start a week later. Pretty commonplace for universities to skip labs the first week. And I will too. I'm just not ready to do lab yet anyway, because I got to do things a little different. I got to print maps that normally I don't have to print. I just need a little more time to get ready for lab. Okay, here's how you'll be graded. First midterm, end of September, worth a quarter year grade. Second midterm, end of October, quarter year grade. Final exam, I don't know when it is. Finals week, we'll have to look that up. I hope it's not Friday, but it might be. It's worth 50% of your grade, and then your lab is worth 25. Now, if you add all that up, I said we're going to do math in here, right? What does that add up to? 125%. One thing I always do in the intro class is I let you drop one of your first 2 exams or half the final. Most students blow a test, okay? And I want your grade to reflect what you actually have learned in here, okay? And having a bad day and having it affect your grade for the whole semester is just not cool in my book. So I give everybody a chance to toss one of their midterm grades or half the final. Your lab grade's going to count, okay? No matter what you do, your lab grade counts, okay? But we'll talk more about lab when we get to it. It's just going to be a series of things that you have to do. If you do them, you will get a good lab grade, okay? If you have issues with the Disability Resource Center, if you have a documented disability, work with them. I'll work with them, and we'll get you the accommodations that you need. You can read the academic integrity UNC policy. Ignore the portable electronic devices, because that's not going to be an issue this semester since we have lots of space between us. But the old way where we used to all be packed together, you know what happens. Person in the middle room has their computer on and they pop up YouTube of, you know, Snoop Dogg narrating Animal Planet or something, and everybody's looking at that, and it's just really hard to learn. So but ignore that. Okay. That's it for the background materials. Do you guys have any questions on kind of nuts and bolts of how the class is going to run? If you do have questions, blurt them out. I want this to be an interactive class, okay? For the people who are at home, obviously that isn't going to work. But if you have questions, what I'll do is I'll repeat the questions so that I have an audio track of it. So if you're at home or the folks that are doing it online can hear your question. I think questions are one of the most valuable ways that we have of learning, okay? So if you have a question, please ask. And ask sort of as we're going through it. Don't save them for the end, because then they're kind of out of context. So if I say something and it's like, that doesn't make sense, or, you know, that's a bunch of crap, I don't agree with that at all. I love when you argue with me. Please argue with me. I'm going to say stuff in here intentionally to kind of rub you the wrong way sometimes, because that helps engage your thinking. I have my own political views. You have your own political views. Most environmental topics today have a political spin on them, okay? We can talk about climate change, and we have people that are all over the place on what their thoughts towards climate change are. I'm going to try to give you the facts, the scientific information devoid of politics. I certainly have my own political views, but I'm not going to interject them as best I can into this class. I want you to make your own informed political decisions. We have a presidential election and elections for congressmen and senators and state reps and local reps coming up this fall.
I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I do want you to vote. Gosh, please vote. Make your voices heard. My generation has really screwed things up. You guys need to take this stuff over. Your generation is way better than my generation. So that's about as political as I'm going to get, is be informed and please vote. And I will help you get the information that you need to make an informed decision about geologic and environmental issues. If you have questions about politics, I'm happy to discuss them. I won't shy away from anything in here. But I will try to just give you facts, okay? As best as I understand them. Okay, so let's just sort of set up the big picture here. We're going to be talking a lot this semester about infrastructure, things that you use every day and maybe take advantage of. We've talked about that a little already. Water, clean water coming out of the walls, electricity faithfully showing up 24/7. Look at this classroom. You have tables, you have paper, you have pens, you have computers, wristwatches, clothing. Where's all that stuff come from? Well, there's a saying in geology, and I love this saying. It says that when it comes to raw materials to build the things that you use every day, there's a saying, if it can't be grown, it must be mined. In other words, all that stuff you use, your pen, your paper, eyeglasses, masks, clothing, ceiling material, chalkboard, computers. Can we grow all the materials for all this stuff? No. If it's not grown, where does that material come from? It comes from the earth. We dig it out of the ground. Now, there's problems with mining. Mining leaves scars on the earth's surface. It can lead to pollution of waterways. There's issues with mining, but it's unavoidable if we want to have the products that make our lives easier, the stuff that you buy every day. And think about this from a worldwide perspective. We're considered to be a developed country because we have all this stuff, right? Well, there's lots of countries in the world that aren't as developed. They want the same stuff you have because it makes our lives easier. So as we add people to the planet, we add pressure to find these materials in the earth and bring them to manufacturers who can pump out the products that you use every day. Okay, so there is a real need for mining. I hate the pollution and the problems that a lot of mines cause. And some mines probably have no business being where they are. Some things maybe we should just not dig out of the ground in those particular places. And we can argue about that. There's a place up in Alaska right now called the Pebble Mine. This is at the headwaters of one of the most famous salmon rivers in the world. And there's a big fight going on right now whether to permit this mine. It's a Canadian company that wants to mine there. And just yesterday, the Army Corps of Engineers said, you guys have failed to put in enough environmental protections, we're going to deny your permit. And it's probably dead, but maybe not. They have a couple weeks to come up with a new plan. That's an area that maybe shouldn't have a mine. But other areas, if you don't have a mine there, that doesn't do anything about the demand for the resources, right? We still need to get them somewhere. So where are we going to get them from? So every time you deny a mine in one place, it just puts pressure on mining other places. So that's something we're going to have to balance as a society. So we'll talk a bit about mining in this class. And we're going to talk about water a lot. Water, water, water. We have over 7 billion people on this planet, and a lot of folks live in areas where there's either not enough water, or the water is so polluted that they're not able to drink it without getting sick. Even here in the US, there is not a single freshwater surface water source that I would just go up and drink from. I spend a lot of time outside. I spend a lot of time up in the mountains. I see a lot of pristine looking streams. I wouldn't drink any of the water anywhere in the US without treating it. I wouldn't. I've had Giardia. I've had nasty stuff from all my travels. It's not fun being sick. I don't like being sick. But that's here in the United States. We're one of the cleanest countries in the world. How are water sources elsewhere in the world? Probably not as clean. So finding clean water is really difficult. We've polluted all of our surface water sources. So now we're looking at groundwater. And we've been using groundwater at an unsustainable rate. We're going through our groundwater stores much faster than they're being replenished. And there are a lot of consequences of that. And we will talk about those this semester. Like I said, we're going to talk about the land, mining, we're going to talk about water, and we're going to talk about energy. Now, as it turns out, most of the energy that we use for transportation, making the products that you buy every day or want to buy in the future, keeping our buildings climate controlled, cool when it's hot, warm when it's cold outside. The ultimate source of this energy, for the most part, comes from something that we refer to as fossil fuels. Oil, coal, natural gas. These are all carbon-based fuels that we burn. That's almost where all of our energy comes from, is burning stuff. We love to burn things. Humans are great at burning things. We do that really well. And we found that a lot of stuff we can dig out of the ground is really easy to burn. Oil, coal, natural gas. And we've been finding better and better ways of extracting this stuff from the earth over the last couple hundred years. And in one sense, it's wonderful. We would not have the society we have today without the steady energy that we get from fossil fuels. It's great in that respect. It's also a terrible form of energy because when we burn it, it releases CO2 into the atmosphere, which is now changing our climate, and it's costing you money. It's costing you a lot of money. Directly and indirectly. And we're starting to run out of some of them. We are using petroleum at a rate that's not sustainable. All right, full disclosure. You should always know something about your professor in terms of their background so that you can make your decision as to whether your professor has any biases, okay? And I like to throw my biases right out front. I'll be perfectly honest with you. My family owns an oil company. It's actually my wife's family. They own an oil company. Antelope Energy. It's been around for about 80 years. My wife's grandfather started the company. They have holdings in Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, North Dakota, Wyoming. When you go to the gas pump, pay that money, I get some of it. Okay? My life is good because of the oil industry. Okay? It's sick. It's absolutely stunning how much money is in the oil industry. If I told you, you probably wouldn't believe it. This is a small company. It's a tiny oil company compared to Exxon and Mobil and all this stuff. The amount of money that my wife's family makes is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Is it fair? I don't think so. Does it change the fact that this is a horrible industry? No. I get a lot of money from it, and I think it's a terrible industry. It's creating more problems than probably good as we go forward. The fact is, though, is that oil is on its way out. Whether my family believes it or not, I don't really care, but oil is on its way out. It's going to be gone by the time you guys are my age. At least we're going to move to something else. It's an economic reality. During your lifetime, you are going to see a switch from fossil fuels to something else. I don't know what that something else is yet. I don't know if it's going to be solar, wind, tidal, or a mixture. I don't know what wins in the future. If I did, I would be investing in it and I would hopefully make a lot of money. but I don't know. And I can't tell you who's going to win, but I can tell you that oil, coal, natural gas are going to go by the wayside. Coal is going away first. It's pretty much on its way out already. There's no saving it at this point because there's better alternatives. The better alternative is natural gas. Natural gas burns a little cleaner. It's still not great, but it's better than coal. And we have so much of it. And the good thing for Americans is that we have lots of natural gas on our land and we don't have to get it from other countries. Petroleum is definitely on its way out. It won't go as quick as coal, but it's going to go. We have a fair bit here in the US, but we import 50% of it. And the countries we import it from, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, a lot of countries in the Middle East that have been politically, openly hostile towards us. So we send them our money, and in turn they build their war machines, and then we have to build our war machine to offset their war machine, and it's just stupid. We got to move away from that for our own long-term security. And that's not a political statement, that's just reality, okay? Talked about this a minute ago. Our thirst for these fossil fuels are changing the climate. It's costing you $1 billion a year just to offset what climate change is doing to our military. Our military deals with climate change a lot. Despite what a lot of political folks say, the military 100% knows about climate change. They've had climate change specialists in the military since the 1960s. We spend $1 billion a year just on the Navy to fix their ports because sea level is slowly rising. And every time there's a big storm, these ports get damaged far worse than they would if we didn't have climate change. Where does that money come from? It comes from your taxes. It's $1 billion a year just for the Navy to retrofit ports. This is a quote from an Army Brigadier General, Gerald Galloway, from a couple years ago. He said, climate change is already impacting the military itself, how it operates, the countries in which we have an interest, where it can result as an instability. We're seeing people moving around right now because of climate change. The environments that they've been living in are no longer livable. And when you get movements of people, it creates instability. Instability leads to military conflict. So this is one of the things the military pays great attention to. Places like Bangladesh, Myanmar, where they're getting huge flooding events that they've never had in the past. It's displacing people and people are moving. They're migrating out of countries into other countries. And that puts a strain on the whole infrastructure and ultimately can result in some military interventions. The other thing is most people on this planet live along coastlines for lots of reasons. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. And as it turns out, coastlines are the ones that are going to be impacted the most by climate change. It's also where we have a lot of our deadliest earth hazards. Flooding from tropical storms. Lots of our active earthquake zones are located along coastlines. Most volcanoes on the planet are located along coastlines. Tsunamis obviously affect coastlines as well as tropical storms. So a lot of our deadliest earth processes just happen to occur where the most people live. And as we keep adding people and these hazards impact these people, some of these people are going to have to move. Mass movements of people create political instability and military instability. And it's something we mentioned right at the beginning of class. One of my main reasons for teaching the course the way I do is to provide you with some useful information that you can use going forward, such as when you buy your own house someday. One of the problems we have here in Colorado is radon. Radon is a colorless, odorless gas that seeps out of the ground. It's really common where you have granitic rocks. We have a lot of granitic rocks in this area. And it's the second leading cause of lung cancer in the US behind smoking. One of the houses I looked at in Fort Collins that I ultimately decided not to purchase had radon levels that were so high that it was equivalent to smoking 12 packs of cigarettes a day. That's how damaging this stuff is. You definitely want to know about it. Before I moved to Colorado, I lived in South Dakota. South Dakota is another hot spot for radon. And I bought my home, and it had slightly elevated radon readings. We'll talk about radon in this class, but basically the unit that you use to measure radon is something called a picocurie per liter. I don't want you to remember this right now. And anything under 4 picocuries per liter is safe. Anything over 12, you really have to do some engineering of your home to rid yourself of this gas. My home in South Dakota was 8. So it wasn't safe, but it wasn't enough to require engineering. But it was equivalent to smoking 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And I didn't want to live with that all the time. So I ended up doing some things to my home to try to rid myself of the radon. But that costs money. That's not something you want to do after the fact. To retrofit your house for radon can cost $10,000 to $20,000. Not cheap. And as I mentioned earlier, we have this election coming up in a couple months. And some of the most contentious issues that we have involve an understanding of earth science. The mine I just talked about in Alaska, Trump administration last week just announced that they were going to approve drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge for oil and gas. We'll talk about that. That is not an easy... There are advantages and disadvantages to extracting oil and gas from that area. And there's advantage and disadvantages to not extracting oil and gas from that area. And I will give you all the facts, and at the end, you're still going to have a hard time making up your mind about it. I have my mind made up about it, but I'm not going to try to tell you what you should think, because it's not simple. If these issues were simple, we wouldn't be debating them. These are all complex. Climate change is complex. Oil and gas extraction is complex. Should we open public lands for mining? That's complex. There's advantages and disadvantages to all of them, and I'm going to try to give you a fair assessment of both sides, or multiple sides, sometimes there's more than 2 sides, to these issues. How many of you are taking this class because you want to be a geologist? Maybe a couple of you. Maybe. I did not go to college to be a geologist. I can tell you right now. I went to college to be a doctor, okay? I was going to be a doctor or a dentist. I liked science in high school. I was pretty good at it, and I like math. And it's like, how do you make a lot of money? You know, how do you get a good job with science and math? Well, you become a doctor, right? That's one avenue. So I went to college, took my chemistry, took my biology, took all my pre-med courses. I did well in them, but, you know, I didn't like them that much. I just didn't, you know, and the thing that really sealed the deal for me is I thought I should get some experience in the medical field before I go on to med school. So I became an athletic trainer for the football team. You know, stand on the sideline with my athletic tape and whatever, and somebody got an injury, we'd go out and help them. Very first game, friend of mine, frat brother of mine, He's a linebacker, sets up right in front of me. I'm staying on the sideline. He's about 4 yards on the field, sets up to make a tackle, and this big lineman comes in from the side, hit him in the shin, and it sounded like a stick of dynamite when his leg snapped. And he's rolling around, his legs like, it was horrible. And I was supposed to go out there and like render some aid, and it's like, no way, man. I just want to go and run away. And I thought, well, maybe this isn't a great career for me, you know? So I did major of the month then for the next year, trying to find, you know, what area of academia do I really connect with? And I hopped in a geology class, and I'm not kidding, within 10 minutes, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what I really like. And within another 20 minutes, I was looking at this professor who had just sort of changed the direction of my future. And I said, I want to do what that guy's doing. And since that time, I've never really wanted to do anything else. And I love this job. I've been doing it, I hate to even admit this, 30 years now. And there's not anything else I would rather do. I get to travel the world. I see things that other people never get to see. I've seen some of the most amazing natural phenomenon that you can even imagine. And I get to work with young people all the time, which I think is a real gas too. Now, if you find that you really like this stuff, come see me. If you don't like it so much that you want to change your plans, that's perfectly cool too. I'm not trying to change you all into geology majors. It's not my goal at all. My goal is to make all of you informed, college-educated people, okay? It's just that simple. But if you really dig this stuff, come see me. I can start directing you in a direction that you might be happy with. Because honestly, some of the most satisfying, well-paying careers require an earth science background. And even more, so this is from Forbes just a couple of years ago. They had this nationwide survey of college students and how satisfied they were with their major and their academic preparation. Geology students were the happiest people on campus. We're happy people. We go outside, we drink beer, we play in the dirt. You know, it's like being a kid all the time, except you get paid. And with some of these jobs, you get paid really well. Until this whole COVID thing, oil industry in this country was going gangbusters, especially around here in Greeley. And we were having some of our majors with bachelor's degrees, they would start over 6 figures. And sometimes with a $40,000, $50,000, $80,000 signing bonus, which is pretty nice coin, you know, for a bachelor's degree. Now, you know, now they can't give the jobs away, but that's kind of the boom or bust nature of some of these energy jobs. But there are other jobs. Now the big thing is environmental jobs. So if you're interested in this, come see me. How are we doing on time? We still have a few more minutes. All right, let's get into some numbers, okay? We're just going to start this today, probably go 10 more minutes and I'll let you go. Let's talk about people, okay? We're all spaced 6 feet apart. It's really nice. I've been to places where you can't be 6 inches from another person. Jakarta, Indonesia. My wife actually used to live there. She lived there for 4 years. You walk down the streets of Jakarta, you are constantly touching people. India is just unbelievable. India probably has more people than China right now. And they're not doing anything really to curb their population growth. We'll talk about why probably next class. But let's look at how human population has grown. So we're going to take the evolutionary idea here, and our earliest human ancestors probably popped up on the geologic timetable about 2 million years ago. Okay, that's when our first, most human-like relatives popped up in the fossil record. So humans have been on this earth about 2 million years. We reached 1 billion people in the year 1830. So it took 2 million years for us to amass 1 billion people on Earth. And then, wow, did we get busy after that. So it took us 2 million years to add the first billion, but it only took 100 years to add the second billion. So yeah, for the longest time, humans just sort of, from a population standpoint, just sort of gradually increased their numbers. And then in the 1800s, all hell broke loose with human population. Like rabbits on, not on steroids, but I don't know, on something else. And look what happened to our next billion, 30 years. So I was born in 1962. Okay, we had about 3 billion people. We have twice as many people today as we did when I was born. So just in my lifetime. And I'm not like ancient. I don't think I'm ancient. You guys might think I'm ancient. But I don't feel like I'm ancient. And humans have more than doubled the population just since I've been alive. Take a look at these numbers. We hit 4 billion in 1975. 5 billion in 1986. I just graduated from college. 6 billion in the mid-90s. We're probably 7 to 8 billion today. Hard to exactly know where we are with this because the population is so dense in some areas and the reporting is so poor that we really don't have a good grasp on exactly how many people we have out there. But it's 7 to 8 billion. That's a lot of people. And look when we added them. Just since the Industrial Revolution. All those people want your stuff. They want cars, computers, cell phones, good places to live, clean water, reliable energy. They want what you have. Where does all that stuff come from? It's either grown or it's mined. So that puts a tremendous pressure on folks like geologists to go out and find these resources to give everybody the stuff that they want. And if we keep adding people, it just adds to the pressure on the earth to provide stuff. More mining, more of the pollution aspects of mining. Do you think this is bad? Is this increase in population a bad thing? How many people think we should probably not be adding 1 billion people every 10 years? Okay? Yeah. This is what you've heard, right? But I'll ask you this. So 2,000 years ago, what was the world's human population? Less than 1 billion, right? In fact, they think about 2,000 years ago it was about 300 million. Kind of the population of the U.S. distributed all over the earth. Okay? Was life better for humans 2,000 years ago? What was the average lifespan 2,000 years ago? It was in the 30s. I'd be dead. I would have been dead a long time ago. Some of you guys you'd be old people 2,000 years ago. So you're saying that 2,000 years ago was better than today? It's not straightforward, right? There's good aspects of population growth because with more people, we have more ideas, more minds, more technology. But we also place a greater demand on the earth to provide us with all this stuff. So what you're going to find in my classes, I'm not going to give you good and bad. There's good aspects and there's bad aspects. Population's the same way. People say, oh, we should just, stop having people. We have too many people. Well, with people comes ideas, and that's a good thing. But with people also comes more pollution, greater strain on the environment. Those are bad aspects. So it's a mixed bag, like most things are. So why did our population suddenly start growing so fast? Well, one is that we're living longer, obviously. Average lifespan now in the U.S. is up around 80. Most developed countries, it's up around 80. We're definitely not at the top of the list here in the U.S. But we're in the upper tier. And even the undeveloped countries now, folks are living well into their 50s and 60s because of advances in healthcare, medicine, vaccinations. Prenatal care is much better. Human childbirth is a rough process. It's tough on the mother, tough on the baby. We've improved mortality rates for infants and mothers through the years, so more babies are surviving. From an earth science perspective, one thing that cuts in the human population are natural disasters. Earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, famines. These things used to kill a lot of people. Today, not so many. One reason is that science has improved our ability to understand these natural hazards. We have predictions for hurricanes. People are able to get ready for them. And then when disasters do strike, we're able to get resources to the people really quick because we have airplanes, ships. There was an eruption in the early 1800s, a volcanic eruption in Indonesia, killed roughly 100,000 people. That would not happen today. Most of those people died over the next few months from starvation. That's not happening in today's society because we could get food and water there quickly. So we don't have the loss of life that we used to have. Even this pandemic stuff that we're going through right now. People are dying, but without our understanding of the virus and how it spreads, we'd have a lot more deaths. So that keeps people alive, those people can have kids, and the population keeps growing. So overriding all this is just science in general. We're able to grow more food on an acre of land today than we could in the past because of pesticides, herbicides, genetic engineering of seeds to withstand drought, to withstand pests. We have all these amazing ideas, and it results in more people surviving and living longer lives. Now, all of these things have drawbacks as well. There's issues with genetically modified foods. There's issues with pesticides and herbicides. There's undeniable good and there's undeniable bad. But the fact is, it's resulted in an explosion of people. How many people can the earth support? There are studies of this. It's called carrying capacity. And people study how many people can actually survive on planet Earth. And I've looked at the studies and, man, they're all over the place. Estimates from 1.5 billion to 100 billion. Not terribly useful. 1.5 billion. How many people do we have right now? We have 5 times that much. How can you have more than the carrying capacity? You can. I'll give you an example. Okay, let's say we had a 40-acre plot of land. 40 acres is basically a quarter of a mile square, okay? And let's say a biologist goes in there and it says the carrying capacity for this 40 acres is 100 white-tailed deer. Okay, that's the carrying capacity of that little chunk of land. We're going to put a fence around it. We're just going to keep these deer in here and we're going to see what happens. Okay, they count the deer, 60 deer. Everything's good? 60 is less than 100, right? So there should be enough resources for all 60 deer. And all 60 deer should be healthy. But maybe you'll get 1 or 2 who are sick for whatever reason. 1 or 2 may die. But you should have a nice crop of new deer that come up next season, right? So maybe next year you have 85 deer. You still good? Yeah, you might have 1 or 2 sick deer, 1 or 2 may die, but you're going to have lots of babies, right? Lots of fawns. Next year, you have 106 deer. Carrying capacity is 100, right? Does that mean that 6 deer are just going to croak over and die automatically? No, what happens? Well, you got the big buck, right? You got the big guy. He's going to get his. You know, and you got the big girl over here. She's going to get hers. She might even get a little extra, right? But you're going to have some in the population who aren't as strong, right? Are they going to get enough? No, so you might get 15 or 20 that aren't going to get enough, right? What starts happening to them? Before they die, they get sick. They start starving, right? They're not getting enough resources. Maybe not a lot die, but they're starting to get sick. Next year, though, you have more babies. You now have 122 deer. Are you going to lose 22? But you're going to have a big section of that population that are going to not have enough, right? Because you got a few slobs like me who are going to take more than their fair share. So you might have 50 or 60 that are getting really sick, and now it's in the second year. And now you start to see dying. You're going to see things start dying off. So what happens generally when you start exceeding the carrying capacity is you see sickness and starvation. Do we have sickness and starvation on Earth? Yeah, you go to sub-Saharan Africa, there's people that are definitely dealing without enough food. You go to India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, people do not have enough food. So there's lots of places where you may be seeing the start of some population-induced problems. So we're going to end with that. And I will see you all on Thursday. If you have questions, I'll stick around a few minutes. Nice to meet all of you.